Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? It is day 20 of RPG A Day 2018, and our question or prompt for today is a really cool one. It's which game mechanic inspires your play the most? And I've actually been really looking forward to this question and the questions that are in the next 2 days because they all deal with mechanics. And if you know me, you know that I like mechanics, I like systems, I'm very intrigued by game design, all that sort of stuff, really holds my interest. And every once in a while I toy around with the idea of maybe like creating a little game. Something that I can try out some ideas because I don't know about you, but like every once in a while I come up with these ideas for dice mechanics and wonder, well, what would this make the game feel like? Which brings up an important point. My answer to this question and to the questions, the next couple days, they always have to include the caveat, well, it depends. And that's not being wishy-washy or indecisive. This plain truth is that, it depends on what your intention is. Like, what do you want this game to feel like? No one mechanic is going to do it all and do it great because they all produce different results. But having said that, I already know what my answer is going to be. And it's going to be a family of mechanics. I'll talk about a couple of specific mechanics, but it's a family of mechanics rather than just one specific mechanic. And they are the mechanics which introduce additional effects besides just success or failure. And when I saw these, I was really kind of knocked out. So this is really, really cool. And there's various examples of games that use these mechanics. They're all a little bit different. And I'll talk about a couple of them. I'll talk about one that's probably one of the easiest to understand and probably does one of the better jobs of actually including these extra effects. But the idea is, like, normally we just roll for success or failure. Sometimes you'll get a degree of success or failure depending on how the game system handles it. But there are mechanics which insert these other effects, which are kind of tangential to, orthogonal to the actual intention. So when you're rolling dice and you want something to happen, well, these other things can actually pop up as a result of your actions, as unexpected, unintended consequences, whether they're good consequences or bad consequences. And they're things that very often we couldn't have predicted happening. And it's really neat when a game formalizes these sort of things because, in my experience, these are things that we inserted into the fiction as game masters, for a long time. We kind of did it organically. We said, we really neat if something else happened here. But one of the cool things about these mechanics is they take the onus of making that decision off the game master. You kind of remove this, the possibility of being misconstrued as having an adversarial or unfair or biased relationship with the players, because it's simply the dice are telling you, well, it's time to do this now. It also, on the flip side of that, prompts us, because very often it's really easy to kind of fall into this rut of just thinking of everything as success or failure, and it says, hey, it's time for the unexpected to happen here. These mechanics, such as the Fantasy Flight game Star Wars mechanic, which introduces not just success or failure, but advantages and threats and triumphs and despairs, these additional things that can happen. These are like the ands and the buts in the success failure paradigm. The idea that yes, you succeeded and something else great happened, or you failed but something neat happened. But you think of these mechanics and first you'll have the degrees of success or failure, like the idea that, okay, well, yes, you succeeded at hacking this computer and you did it so well that nobody can track the fact that you were there. They can't trace it back to you. That's great. Or something like a no and would be, a bad or, a great degree of failure. So like, no, you're unable to pick the lock, and not only that, but you did such a slipshod job that you tripped an alarm, and now, everybody's alerted to your presence. However, having these other axes or domains or whatever you want to call them, I'm lacking the right word, but the idea there's other effects that can happen that are kind of tangential to what you're really trying to do. That opens up this whole new world. And so these introduce like the buts into the narration. Like, yes, you succeed at talking your way past the guard, but once you're inside the complex, a rival smuggler that you can see that they notice you and they're talking to somebody, and maybe they're taking interest that like maybe something fishy is going on. So you've aroused their suspicion, even though you had that success. These are completely unrelated to your success or failure. Or you can have the idea like, no, you don't hit the stormtrooper with your blasters. You're trying to hit him, and because he's shooting at you. But when you missed, you hit the comm panel next to him, and he's unable to call in reinforcements. So you failed, but something advantageous happened. Something really triumphant happened in that particular case. And that I find really, really neat. There's other games or systems like Powered by the Apocalypse games which have those that middle ground where it's this like success at a cost, or maybe it's even like a failure, but you kind of get a little bit of what you want. All that sort of, these mechanics, they're really, really interesting because they open up this whole other world, rather than just kind of constantly going succeed, fail, which gets kind of boring, or even just, great degree of success, or, a small degree of success. The idea that it inserts or prompts us to insert something else into the fiction, because I believe we're creative people. One of the great things about role-playing games is it's this collaborative effort to create the fiction. It's not just one person making it all up. But even with a bunch of us together, after a while it can get a little bit stale. We can fall into kind of a rut. And these mechanics give us a kick in the butt and say, hey, it's time for this other effect to happen. And it'll give us some guidance on what that might be, but then we're free to create what that is, depending on like how the system actually informs us, like what kind of guidelines it gives us. It gives us, in many cases, a procedure or protocol. Well, who makes this up? And the Fantasy Flight games, in Star Wars and like the Genesis system, it literally will tell you, well, the player gets to make up these advantages. They get to make up these good things that happen, and the game master makes up the threats and the despairs. And so it formalizes that. So it's not so, it removes a little bit of the indecisiveness, or well, who gets to do this? It kind of formalizes that, which is, it takes a little bit of getting used to at first, but that's actually pretty neat. It takes the onus off the game master, so it's not you, introducing some kind of GM fiat. It's like the plastic gods have spoken. It's time to do this right now. But as I said before, it gives us this kick in the butt. It kind of jars us out of our kind of stupor of, okay, well, we'll succeed, fail, and gets us out of that rut and says, hey, it's time to insert something really interesting into the fiction here that you wouldn't have thought of. And I think that's really, really neat. So it's a mechanic that's very inspiring no matter how it shows up. And so that's something that intrigues me. It's something that I look for in a game, which makes me smile because I said, this is going to be interesting because it's going to force us to make this kind of stuff up. Pretty neat stuff. I like it.